Welcome everybody. I can see we've got lots of people joining the meeting as I speak. We're just going to give it a few more moments just to allow everyone to get in to the meeting okay today. In the meantime, I will just let you know the session itself is being recorded. We will open up at the end for any questions. Throughout the session, please do use our Q&A feature to ask any questions in the meantime. We'll be able to monitor those and respond to you throughout the session. And also, towards the end of the session, there will be a poll. If you can complete that, will be absolutely fantastic, just so we can get some live feedback, so we can bring you the best quality content regarding these sessions. So the session today is looking into business continuity planning, getting a business continuity plan in place. Obviously, coming up to, as part of the Data Security Protection Toolkit, part of that is expecting you to have a business continuity plan in place, what that means, and actually ensuring that it's not just something you're ticking a box to do. You've done it one time and you've forgotten about it. This is a live document that you should be referring back to, amending, changing, and ensuring that it is implemented, because at the end of the day, it ensures that business is able to continue as usual. Should there be a problem with your systems, your access, your data, we need to have a plan in place to ensure that we can access our data and continue as normal. So this is what this is about today. Some key topics that we will be highlighting as we go throughout will be obviously looking at backup strategies, what that means, why it's so important, and how to test those. We'll be looking at how to retrieve lost and compromised data should that happen. And again, there are a whole number of different ways in which we can lose our data, in which it can go missing, in which we can have cyber attacks, and we need to know what to do in that situation. We need to know how to get our data back, and as I say, continue as normal. We'll put that all into that business continuity plan. We'll be looking at incident response. So if you do have an incident, or you think there has been an incident, what you need to do. We'll lay out the guidelines from the ICO. And we'll be going into cyber resilience, obviously a very important piece. And I place a lot of emphasis on cyber resilience. And obviously, as part of the Data Security Protection Toolkit, we are looking at securing and protecting that data for those in and around our organization and those under our care. Hugely important, because the impact of not having good cyber security in place can be detrimental, as well as not complying with certain legal frameworks. So we'll go into some cyber resilience training, and I'll give you some tips that you can include in your business continuity planning. And then we'll highlight the importance of testing and auditing throughout this session. As I say, a business continuity plan should not be just a one and done piece of work. This is something that should be enforced, something that should be almost like a living document. So why does it matter? I've probably stated a few key points there just in the intro, but business continuity planning basically protects vital services for vulnerable people. It minimizes disruption from cyber attacks or system failures. So as an organization, we know there are many different variables out there that can impact how our organization runs and the information we have access to. And we need to ensure that we minimize any disruption, especially from cyber attacks, which we know are very prevalent. We need to be aware of those, and we need to be able to mitigate that risk and be able to continue as normal should it happen. And also, having a business continuity plan in place demonstrates compliance with laws and regulations. So some very key points there of absolutely why you need this in place. Now, one thing I will highlight, obviously, coming up to the end of June, the 30th of June, we are approaching the deadline for DSPT. So if you haven't already published or republished and you need support, I will leave my details at the end. You can reach out to me, and I will be able to offer that one-to-one support should you need it. And obviously, business continuity planning, which is part of that, I'll be able to provide you additional support on that as well. So data protection, obviously a big piece of business continuity planning. We need to make sure our data is protected, it's secure, it's safe. There are a number of other documents you can have in place and policies to ensure that data is protected. And in my previous sessions, which looked at information asset registered and record of processing activities, and then things like the data protection impact assessment. Those are documents which, again, are required, and they will help you ensure that you are protecting your data. But also, as a business continuity plan, we need to identify as well, including in there where our data could be compromised and what to do in that event. I've just seen a comment from in the chat. Yes, we will be sharing the slides out to you, so you'll have access to all the resources. And as I say, this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to play this back as well in the future via the Digital Care Hub website. So a few scenarios that could happen as a result of well, why could we lose our data? Why could business not continue as normal? You can have broken or lost devices, and there's a number of ways these can happen. Again, just standard break-in device, or it's being used over a period of time and it degrades, or we get viruses, or there could be flooding in our building, fires, many different reasons it could happen. Or if we are implementing a bring your own device policy and we're bringing our own devices into work, there is opens up the risk of losing devices. We could also have system outages and failures, and then obviously those cyber attacks as well. So these are a number of ways in which we could lose access to our systems or our data, and we need to consider these as part of that business continuity plan. So the first area I want to cover off today is looking at backups, which is a huge part of business continuity planning. Now, the reason for that is as an organization, you will have lots of data, lots of files, all different types of files. Again, very broad topic, but it's very important that you have copies of your data. So you have copies of your files, you've got copies of especially your critical data. And the reason for that is we cannot rely on having all of our data and files on one system. It's self-explanatory in that if that system were to go down, or we would lose it, or it broke, we would lose everything. And that is why we need to create a backup. I say a backup being a copy of your data. Now, there's a few things that you need to consider when creating backups. Firstly, securely backing up data to ensure that backups are regularly tested. And we'll go through all of these in this session today, but quite often I will advise organizations, care organizations around backups and creating backups. And one of the issues that I've encountered time and time again is that when we go to actually test a backup, so what I'll get them to do is I'll get them to get their backup. It might be cloud storage, it might be an external hard drive. Again, there's a number of ways it can be done. We go and put it on a different computer, or we use a different computer in a different building on a different network, and they can't access their backups. So we need to make sure we are routinely testing them and making sure they work and we can recover our data. That is a huge piece here. And you'd be surprised at how many times people can't actually access their data because they've never tested it, and they're very unfamiliar with how to actually get hold of those backups. I'll also be looking at the importance of encrypting your backups. So yes, creating those copies is brilliant, but we want to make sure those copies are secure. And one way in which we can secure those copies is by encrypting them. And then we can also store our backups of our devices in separate locations, in secure locations, and again, make sure we are testing them. So there are a few strategies that we can implement when it comes to backing up data. One strategy, which has been around for many years and is often recommended, is something called the 3-2-1 strategy. Something I wanted to include in here today. And what that means is, let's say we have a file, and I'll make this really simple. We are creating 3 identical copies of that file. Now, with those 3 identical copies, we're putting 2 on different devices. So we're taking them off of our device and putting them on 2 different devices. And we're taking one of them and putting it off-site or offline. And I'll mention what that means in a moment. So this strategy ensures that if your system goes down, you have 3 alternative options to access your data. So it gives you extra backup. It's creating backups from backups. It's not just about creating that one copy. If we have those multiple copies in place in different means and methods of accessing them, it just ensures that we can continue. Now, again, you need to ensure those backups are secure, and you need to make sure they are tested. And we'll go through today how to do that. So I mentioned taking one of your backups off-site or offline. There's a few ways you can do that. What I mean by that is the offline rule. At any given time, are one or more of your backups offline? So one way you can do this is by putting your backup onto an external hard drive, a USB, a memory card. Again, I've put ignore the typo on that stage there. I've read that just then. But there's a few ways in which we can do this. So it's literally taking the data, putting it on an external method. So let's just say I buy an external hard drive. I've encrypted it. I've made sure it's all secure. Plug it into my computer, transfer a file onto there as a copy, take it off. That would be what I would regard as an offline copy. And you can take that off site, but again, you need to make sure you have protection in place and you're considering that as part of your business continuity plan. Now, I keep mentioning it, but encryption, very important here. So what is encryption? Often we recommend that you encrypt things. Part of this digital data security protection toolkit, it's recommended that you are encrypting files and devices. And this goes for also encrypting wherever you're holding those backups. Now, as simply as possible, encryption means basically protecting a document by turning the text into unreadable text. Now, we'll be able to read it because we have access to it by a password. So provided we put that password in, we can view the content of our file. However, if it's encrypted and somebody tries to hack it or gain access to it with software or hardware, and they try and extract the information, all they will get back is unreadable text. So they won't be able to read it. It'll be almost impossible to decipher, and therefore it protects the content within whatever you're holding it on. So you can see the importance of encrypting here. It just means that if we do get malware onto our systems and we have encrypted files, it's going to be very hard for that malware to access those files. If we've got encryption on our emails, our secure systems, again, end-to-end encryption, they won't be able to target those emails as they're being sent. If we've got encryption on our external means, so the external hard drive, USB, again, if we lose those and someone tries to access them on their computer, they won't be able to without a password. And if they try to extract it with software, they won't be able to. So that is why we need to encrypt our devices. Now, I will get into a bit more detail as we go through how to actually do that, but there are a few different ways in which you can. One thing I will highlight, if you are using cloud storage and it is deemed secure, it is accredited, it's a safe cloud system, you will have backup enabled on there already. That is a service that is often provided, especially if they are cyber secure. They will back up via the cloud and they will encrypt your data within the cloud. Now, if you're backing up, if you're encrypting just your devices themselves, you'll usually go to settings to find how to encrypt. But I will explain that as we go through a bit later on. So the next thing I wanted to highlight is, given the situation that our data is compromised, we can't access it. We find that our systems are down, maybe a flood may have broken, may have been stolen. We need to ensure that we can retrieve lost or compromised data as quickly as possible. And there's two things that we need to consider here. One is recovery. So is the data recoverable? Is it restorable? If we have backup in place and if we are regularly backing up, we will be able to access that data. So for instance, say one person backs up their data once a month and the other person backs up every day. The person who backs it up every day will be at less detriment because they will have lost less data. So we need to make sure that data is recoverable. We can recover as much data as possible and that we're actually able to access that data. So this is where you need to test it. And this is where the regular rule comes in. So the regular rule states that we're doing it regularly. So we're backing up on a regular basis and we're including that in our business continuity planning and that we're able to actually access the data. So you need to be regularly testing that data. So as I said before, going on a different system, logging into cloud storage, going on a different computer, using your external means and checking that you're able to open those files. Quite often, as I say, people go on to other systems, find that the system doesn't allow them access or the files aren't formatted right, and so they can't access the data. And it's something they haven't come up against until a real life situation, which you don't want it to get to that point. So we need to consider the recovery rule and the regular rule. Is it recoverable, and are we backing up on a regular basis? So again, looking at retrieving that lost and compromised data, there are things that we need to consider here. So firstly, manual restoration testing. So one thing you can do, and you can spot check this, and this is something you can do from time to time. Again, the business continuity plan isn't there just as a one-off, to just be used in the scenario that it happens. We need to be testing this. So you can do spot checks on files. So to check things are being backed up regularly and are being backed up correctly. Very simple way you can do this is selecting, having your system open that you use on a daily basis, having a different system open at the same time. So just open the two, get your backup in the other system, and randomly select a file from your computer and then check the backup, bring them both up and check if they're identical. And that's one way you can spot check to make sure you are backing up your critical data and it is actually being backed up. One thing I want to highlight here, and the two of them go together on this list, are third-party verification tools and backup verification. Now, again, if you're using those cyber secure, cyber accredited suppliers, and I will be doing a session in the future all around this and how to identify those. But you probably will be as a care organization using third parties, and often they offer backups and whatnot. Now, along with their services, they do offer third-party verification tools that if there was a compromise or attack, they do go through checking if your data is still authentic and it hasn't been tampered with. In some scenarios, our data can be tampered with, it can be altered, it can be changed, it can have malware attached to it. And these third-party verification tools just check that the file itself hasn't been changed. So they don't go through the data, they basically just check that the coding is correct, nothing's been altered or amended, it is legitimate. Now, for those who are very technically savvy, it is something you can do yourself, but it is a lot more complicated. But it's just to highlight. I just wanted to highlight it on there that this is something you can do. Companies do offer it given that situation, but just something to consider that there are some cases when there has been a cyber attack that files can be tampered with. So again, services do offer that. I'm not going to touch too much on that because I could do a whole session. I will be doing a session in the future how to validate companies offering who are cyber secure accredited and offer those services. Also, cloud-based backup testing. So this is something that is often overlooked. A lot of us use cloud-based storage to back up our data. If you're using a secure, reputable one, that's fine. However, we need to make sure that we can access that cloud-based storage on a different system. So one way you can do this is, as I said, like before, go onto a different system, use a different private network, log into your cloud-based storage, see if you can access those files. And then finally, simulation and disaster scenarios. So we should be simulating within our organization. And again, it's down to you. You will provide this in the business continuity planning, that you are testing this plan. So you will simulate scenarios and see if you can access that data in those different scenarios. So one could be you don't have access to your device at all. Another could be you've had a cyber attack, which has compromised your network. So you're not necessarily going to go into cloud storage now. You might have to go offline. Because one thing I always say is if you have had a cyber attack in real time, there's malware, quite often the first thing to do is disconnect your internet. And obviously the problem there is how you're going to get access to your cloud storage. And that's where you have that offline backup as well. So again, it's considering all these things in that business continuity plan, which you might have overlooked beforehand. So let's say you have an incident or you think you've had an incident. This is very important and it's something which I need to stress to everybody in the meeting today. First thing you need to do is, and again, this is a legal requirement, you must be registered with the ICO. So that's an absolute must. If you haven't done that already, you need to register with the ICO. Again, that is a legal requirement. The ICO are the ones who enforce legal frameworks to ensure that we are complying. So this isn't just It's not a recommendation. This is something you have to do. Very simple to do. You just go to the ICO website, type in register, and you'll follow it through from there. The Data Security Protection Toolkit also provides the guidance and advice and shows you how to do that as well. Now, if you have a data breach and you think you've had a data breach, you must report certain incidents within 72 hours of becoming aware of it. Now, you don't need to report everything, just certain incidents. And I'll show you what we need to report here. So there's a really great link here. I'm just going to go across to it. And this is where we report data breaches. So if we go across the ICO website, you can literally just type in ICO report breach or ICO report. And then from here, it will go through with a quick survey just to check if you need to report this breach or not. So in this scenario, we're just going to start the quick questions here. It will go through exactly what you're looking for. So in this one, it says a personal data breach can be broadly defined as a security incident that has affected the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of personal data. Have you determined whether the personal data breach has occurred? So in this scenario, we're looking at whether it is impacting personal data. Now, personal data has legislation on it that we need to comply with. So if it is being breached or we think it might have been breached, we have to report this. So let's give a scenario that I've just discovered. I've had malware sat on my computer and I don't know how long it's been there for. And it could have been spying on files for residents in a care home. Now, obviously, that is going to affect personal data. So I'm just going to hit yes here. Making your own assessment. Does the breach involve the personal data of living individuals? Yes, it does. And then the final question, it's looking at the wording behind personal data breach. It goes through Article 29, but it's basically saying, following your own assessment, is there likely to be a high risk to individuals' rights and freedoms? Now, if the scenario I've just given could be that malware could have been retrieving data on residents in my care home, then yes, they could use that data to go commit identity theft, which could impact that individual. And I need to say, yes, that could be happening. They do also include a list of examples of what personal data breaches are and could mean. And you'll be surprised, anything that identifies a person can really be down to things like emails, even photographs, things we wouldn't really consider immediately, payroll, phone numbers, all sorts of things. They can impact their rights and freedoms. So I'm just going to click yes, click continue, and then it tells me exactly what to do. So because there is likely a risk, it tells me I need to report it. And it gives me guidance on exactly what to do. There is an advice line. They provide full advice on what to do, what you need to do next, who you need to inform, how to go about it, how to mitigate risk. So loads of useful information in here. And then you would obviously report that data breach should you need to, by what the outcome here is. So as an instant response in your business continuity plan, this is something that you'll be putting in there. You'll be developing and clearly stating that response and then that recovery plan. So the ICO lays out just 7 quick steps that you can follow around what to do in an incident. So obviously, first one, don't panic. Second one is start the timer. You've got 72 hours to potentially report it if you need to. So first thing you need to do is find out exactly what happened. So you need to spend some time doing some fact finding. Very interesting. There are hundreds of different ways in which a breach could have occurred, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a cyber attack. There are other ways like unlocked doors, CCTV cameras going down, lots of things. I won't go through all of them now, but anything could have caused a breach. So we need to find out what happened. And then from there, we need to try to contain that breach. And there's a number of steps you can use to try to contain that. And we'll touch on those in the next slide. Once you've done this, you need to assess the risk. So you should assess it, find out what the harm could be, who could be at harm, whether it's staff, whether it's yourself, whether it's people outside the organization or people in your care. You need to assess the level of risk. And if necessary, you then need to act to protect those affected. And this is really important. As I said, if there has been a data breach, the detriment to those whose data could be at risk could be huge. So we need to mitigate that risk and we need to inform them and help them protect themselves from what's happened. And then finally submit the report if needed. Now, again, the ICO provide full guidance. It's included in these slides of how to respond to a personal data breach. And there is that advice line. Now, I mentioned containing the breach. Again, very important. A few things we can do to actually contain a breach. And there's a number of different ways. As I say, there are hundreds of different scenarios that could create a data breach. And I definitely will not go through all of them. They could be down to simply losing something in your office and retracing your steps. That could be part of the business continuity plan, or calling staff and checking if they've seen the data that's gone missing, or finding out what's happened with some locks on your doors, why the system failed, or why a code system failed, or there's loads of different things. And then there's down to cyber security of maybe our devices have been stolen, and now we need to ensure that we can access them remotely and wipe them if needs be. Now, I say remote tracking and wiping, and again, this is something that you would integrate in your bring your own device policy. So if you are bringing your own devices into work and going out of work with devices, you will have a policy in place which ensures the maximum security on those devices. And as part of that, something that you can integrate are different apps. And I won't go through all of them. There are loads of third-party apps. I'm just going to use the two most common ones here just to demonstrate. For instance, Google, they offer Google Find My Device. You literally just type Google Find My Device. And with a Google account, you link it to your device. And then if your location is on, you can go to a world map and you can track your device. You can zoom right in and find it. Now, cyber criminals, or well, rather criminals, know this, and they'll turn the device off. And in the case that your device has been stolen, I would factory reset that device just to wipe it completely. And again, this is something which, if you're following the data security protection toolkit, you will have considered all of these things. Now, for Apple, the app is called Apple Find My. And again, very much like this, you integrate that with your Apple account, it goes on the Apple ecosystem, and you can again track and remotely wipe your devices. Now, if you're using a Windows device, again, you can go to your settings. So if you're in this meeting now, you can literally just click on settings. When you click on your settings in the search bar, just type in find device, something like that. And you'll see there's an option to turn on the option to find that device. And again, if your location on your laptop is on, by logging into a Microsoft account, you'll be able to track that device or have other remote access to it. But these are very important that we should have these on our devices so that if they are stolen or go missing, especially if we're bringing them outside the organization, we have that bit of control to enhance security. Now, again, if there is a breach, say, for instance, there have been a phishing attack that has been successful, we need to ensure that passwords are changed. And we need to be telling all our staff that there has been an attack. So it's many times people get phishing attacks, and a phishing attack being a malicious email, pretending to be somebody with a link, trying to steal data from them. And often we'll just report it and ignore it. What we've failed to do is inform our staff. And what these phishing attacks will often do, especially if it's targeted, is they will try to target multiple people in the organization. And it's really important that we are informing staff of this attack so people know there is a phishing attack, because the worst thing that can happen is we know it's a phishing attack, but then our colleague goes and clicks the link, puts their details in, and now access has been made through the system. So password change, very important in containing those breaches, and having multi-factor authentication in place. Also disconnecting compromised networks. So if you have a malware attack or remote access or ransomware, disconnect your internet. Start your computer up in safe mode and run an antivirus scan. So how do we prevent that further harm? again, by assessing the risk, by looking at the level of risk of whatever situation we are faced with. And as I say, there are hundreds of scenarios here which you could consider in this situation. And some of those could be by using strong passwords, by implementing multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, incredibly important. With that in place, the stats show that it eliminates most successful attacks of phishing. Having antivirus software that is up to date. So again, all part of the data security protection toolkit. If you are working through that, it's all in there, all the guidance. But antivirus scanning will root through your system and find malware and delete it, especially up to date antivirus software. And that's why we need it. A scary statistic here is that on average, it takes around 180 days for most organizations to identify, well, the average on average, it takes 180 days to identify a malware sat on their computer. Now, you think 180 days where something could have been sat on the computer spying on documents, passwords, information, collecting information before it was even removed. If those organizations were running regular antivirus scans, this could have been eliminated. If you're in a real world situation where you know you've just had malware or someone has clicked on a suspicious link or downloaded something, you need to get everybody to start running those antivirus scans to check nothing has come through. And the biggest reason for success in cyber attacks and often data breaches are down to human error, unfortunately. And it's usually us volunteering information or staff volunteering information. And so we need to have that awareness training, that cyber secure training. And again, as part of the data security protection toolkit, one of the requirements is to have 95% of your staff to have that cyber security data protection training. The Digital Care Hub have a full free training module with certification, which you can complete. And that will meet that requirement. But this is something you need to be integrating. It's really important. We have identified, we know that most successful attacks are a result of human error. There are suppliers and sites that offer simulation training give scenarios. I know HMRC do it. I know National Cybersecurity Centre do it. Digital Care Hub, Hook Security, just to name a few, offer simulation training to show you what phishing emails look like, what to look out for. I can also offer that support, and I do sessions around cyber awareness training as well to just identify what you're trying to find there. And there you go, we've got a link in there to the e-learning modules. So I would save that link, absolutely important. And there are two very useful pieces there. There's one for staff and then one for leads, so more senior role in which you can complete that training in there. But you need to be looking at having about 95% of your workforce doing the training, and you can comply with that by completing that training there, all free. So also protection from identity theft. We know that what often happens is cyber criminals will try to harvest data, or criminals will try to harvest data. And if there has been a breach, even a physical breach, if something's been stolen or lost or accessed, again, cybersecurity, we know criminals will often either sell the data on or use the data to commit identity theft. And so by collecting that information, they can quite easily start to infiltrate other systems. And from what could just be one phishing attack could lead to an organized crime unit starting to launch multiple attacks against you, pretending to be the police, the bank, HMRC, all trying to get involved in this fabricated scenario to extract as much information as possible. And if there is a data breach where we're holding people's personal data, they could be subject to that risk. And so that's why we need to have an incident response in our business continuity planning. And as I say, the ICO give full guidance here. They tell exactly what to do and how to protect people from identity theft and how to inform them of it. And then finally, IT support. If you have your suppliers of different systems, contacting them to let them know what's happened so they can advise you, or also increase security or tell you how to increase security, and also reporting it too. So again, if you haven't signed up to the ICO, you need to do that. Very, very important. You can just do that. Sorry, I'm just answering a question here. You can do that cyber awareness training on that platform. So if you go through to it, you'll see the modules. And then once you've completed everything, there is certification there. Also, reporting it. So, as I say, report to the ICO if you need to, but also if you think you've had a cyber attack, reporting it to Action Fraud. I always highlight this. We know majority of people do not report cybercrimes. I can guarantee everyone sat here right now, you've probably had phishing emails. I've had several phishing emails this week, and I will admit some of those I didn't report. Maybe I was busy or too tired, so I can guarantee most of you probably haven't. But the more of these we can report, the better. So all you need to do is go to Action Fraud's website, and on the landing page, you can report cyber attacks in there. But something we should be doing, again, is the habit of it just eliminates it for the wider society and gets the awareness out there. So, as I say, building cyber resilience is really important. Part of that is the training that you can complete, and the training's on there. There's a number of different ways you can do this, but also just making it a culture within your organization that your staff are becoming aware. As I said, human error is usually one of the biggest causes of these attacks being successful. Yes, we might have an attack, but if we've got everything in place, we're probably going to be pretty secure. Um, but also developing a strategy for securing our networks, our devices. And as I say, if you look at the DSPT, the section IT systems and devices will give you the full guidance on there. If you want to exceed standards, complete all of it, and then you will know you'll be at the highest level of cybersecurity if you're complying that and enforcing it. I will keep reiterating this. I had people today already question me on this. I've advised a care organisation today as well, separately, who their staff are all using devices, but they didn't have a solid policy in place. If you're using devices for personal and work-related purposes on one system, you or bringing those devices in and out of work, you have to have a bring your own device policy or bring your own device policy. And the reason for that is why would you secure every system, but then not secure those other systems that are going in and out of the organization? So we need to implement controls for our staff to put in place, like lock screens and whatnot, to ensure that they are secure. And I'll touch on those on the next slide. We need to also mitigate the risks of malware, phishing, and hacking. So we need to prevent these from coming through in the first place. Good way to do this is we know the gateway is often through emails. By using a secure email service, you're going to have more protection. And one of those secure email services available to you, provided you have gone through the DSPT, will be NHS Mail. And I'll touch on that in a moment. So if your staff are bringing their own devices in, again, that opens up a whole new network, a whole new world, so to speak, of being able to compromise data. We could lose those phones. We could have them stolen. We could have our own cyber attacks. We don't know. We can't regulate them 24/7, what staff are doing on those phones or what websites they're going to or what emails they're clicking on. So we need to make sure that their devices are protected as well. So we can do things like switching on screen lock protection, putting that into a policy, making sure they have those remote tracking options on there that I've mentioned before, like Google Find My Device or Find My for Apple. Keeping the devices and apps up to date. This is very important. So all of your systems, all your devices, you should be regularly updating. By ensuring you're doing software updates and app updates, you're ensuring the latest software is there to protect you from the latest attacks. And then finally, understanding the importance of not using public Wi-Fi for work-related purposes. Your staff need to know that. Public Wi-Fi opens up a whole host of risks. If you're not willing to do something in public, don't do it on a public network. You should absolutely not be accessing personal data on public Wi-Fi networks. It is protected by law, and it should only be accessed on secure systems and private Wi-Fi networks. So as I said, a few ways we can protect ourselves against malware. Malware is something that can often cause data breaches or lock down our files and where we need to go to our backups. We do this by keeping our systems updated. Again, I'll just highlight how to do that. On Windows, if you go to your updates and type in update, literally go to your settings and type update, you'll have an option that says Windows Updates, and in there you will be able to run any latest updates. If you're using an Android device, you just go to your settings and type software update. And if you're using an iPhone, again, you go to your general settings and software update. To update your individual apps, you can either go to your settings and then your apps or your app settings, and you can run automatic updates whenever you're connected to the network, or you can individually update those apps by going into them and checking if there's an update available. That ensures you have the latest software, and the latest software comes with the latest protection. Again, having secure email, really important. If you have a secure email service, they are much harder to spoof. Spoof are creating emails that look like they're sent from legitimate bodies. We're using secure email. There are teams in place that ensure a lot of emails can't get through, and we can report those emails, and we can also integrate end-to-end encryption. We need to be backing up regularly. So if we do have malware that locks down our system or infiltrates our files, we need to be accessing other backups, like we said before, and ensuring they are working. Implementing device controls, running regular security updates, and creating an incident response plan, as we mentioned previously. Just diving a bit more detail, everybody here today should have up-to-date antivirus software in place to detect and remove threats, and you should be running those on a regular basis, especially if you think there has been a breach. You need to run that immediately. If you've enforced a strong multi-factor authentication and password policy, you will have systems that are much harder to get into, and you need to make sure they're implemented. And then again, I'll say this over and over, education. Human error is a significant risk factor in malware infections. So how do you make a strong password? I always use this as an example. There's a great website called How Secure Is My Password. You can literally, I've just gone off the screen. You can literally just type this in right now. How Secure Is My Password, recommended by lots of organizations, even National Cybersecurity Center, link off to How Secure Is My Password. It's a really great tool. I use this often. Don't put your real passwords in here. Instead, just put in what I'd say templates. So just to raise awareness of how you make a strong password. So for your staff, what I would say is get them on something similar to this and get them to start playing around. Don't put their real passwords in there, but start playing around with what makes a strong password. So I'm just going to highlight something quite scary here. The misconception is that people often believe that there is a criminal sat behind a computer physically trying to guess your password. And they're just going over and over and over again until they get lucky and crack your password. In most cases, that is not the case. In most cases, they're using software which will sift through tens of thousands of combinations of passwords a second. And so if we're using a very basic password, that system will crack that password instantly. So let's investigate that. There was data showing that the most commonly used password for the past 4 years was the word password. So if I click into this, it's going to recommend me a password from my password manager, but we want to get into the habit of being able to create our own password. So I'm just going to type the word password in. You won't be able to see it on my screen, but if I put password, all lowercase, which was the most commonly used password for the past 4 years around the world, and that would have been cracked instantly. So people sit there thinking, I can outsmart these criminals by using a very obvious password. No, they are going to crack that instantly with a computer system. Also, I wouldn't use anything that can be linked back to you. So cyber criminals can do data harvesting where they can source information from you, input keywords into more sophisticated systems, which can crack quite complicated passwords if they're made up of your personal information. So make it really random. So the way to do this, and a good technique you can use to inform your staff or those around you, or even in your personal life, is pick 3 completely random objects. So I'm just going to look around my desk. I've got a bit of paper next to me, so I'll do the word paper. We know that'll be cracked instantly. I've got a phone here, so paper, phone, and then I've got a mouse on my computer. Paper, phone, mouse. Those 3 random words would take a computer about 1,000 years to crack. Completely random. But we can make this more complicated, and we want to layer these passwords. The reason for that is that it takes a computer today 1,000 years to crack. Technology is growing exponentially, especially looking at things like AI tech. What is 1,000 years today in computing power? This time next year could be a few minutes. So we need to make this a bit harder. So what I do is I'm just going to put a random capital letter in. So I'll just remove that first letter, put a capital P in. You can't see it. Takes me to 43 million years. Then I'll put a number in there. Let's just throw the number 9 in there. Takes me to 37 billion years. And then let's throw a random character in there. I'm just going to do an @ symbol. Takes me to 93 trillion years. And as you can see, the background turns green, and that lets me know that is a very strong password. And there's loads of additional information included in this website too. So that's just one resource to show how to create a strong password and making sure that you are implementing that and enforcing that in your workforce. Now, next, having multi-factor authentication, truly important here. The reason for that is that if someone was to click on a phishing link, which usually takes you to a fake website where they usually put their password and email address in, if a criminal had access to their password and email, they still wouldn't be able to get in without that second step verification. And there's a number of ways in which two-factor authentication works. One is that you might get a phone call to your phone with an automated voice telling you to press a key. You might get a text message, or you might get a authenticator app on your phone that generates a code. In all three of those scenarios, that criminal would physically need your phone in order to log in. And you can see why just having this in place eliminates almost all of these successes going through. And that's why you should be integrating multi-factor authentication onto all of your systems. If you check in the chat, there is a link there with information on how to do that and multi-factor authentication. And in the data security protection toolkit, goes through the guides, information, how to do that as well. Now, there is a loophole to this. How cyber criminals try to get around this is what will happen is they'll often get your password and email address, at which point you'll realize that you've been scammed. And then they'll ring you up and they'll pretend to be either the police or your bank or somebody else or your IT department or your supplier. And they'll say, we know you've had a cyber attack. We just need to make sure your account's okay. So we're going to send a code to your phone. Or you need to go into your authenticator app and you need to read that code back to me to clear security. Now you, in your panic state, will read it back to them and they've just got hold of your second factor. So there are layers to these scams. If anyone is ever asking you for that second factor, never give it to them. That's an outright scam. That is just for you and you alone. Now, I mentioned encryption a number of times today and closing in towards the end of this session. Encryption, very important to add to your devices, but also your backups, again, as part of business continuity planning. Should anything be compromised or stolen or lost, we need to make sure that whatever hands it gets into, they can't access that personal or sensitive data. So how do we do it? So a few ways you do it. Apple have made it quite easy. If you set a passcode on your Mac or your iPhone, your tablet, just having a passcode will encrypt the device. For a Windows device, what you're doing is you're going to your settings and you're typing the word encryption in. So I'm just going to bring this up. I'm just going to hide this. There's no personal data. I'll show you in a moment what this looks like. But if you go to your settings, type encryption, and then there's nothing here personal. This is a fake email that I use for these sessions. So you've got device encryption here. And then what you do is you just turn it on and that will encrypt your whole device. So settings, encryption, turn on. Now, if you've got outdated software, you won't be able to do this. And what you want to be doing is you want to be encrypting your drive. So you do this through something known as BitLocker drive encryption. Again, you can search this in your settings, BitLocker. But if I click on this, it'll take me through to here. At the moment, I've got a drive in my computer which is encrypted, and you just turn it on, follow the steps, and that will encrypt the drive. But this is great for encrypting external hard drives, USB sticks, memory cards. If you plug those into your computer, they will show here, and then you can encrypt each individual one. And that's something you should do. If you're using any external hard drives, USB sticks to store files, plug them into your computer, go to BitLocker, and just make sure you've turned BitLocker on to encrypt each of those drives. On Android, you just want to go to your settings and literally just go to type in encryption. Depends what device you have. You can do a simple web search to find that out, and it will show you how to do it. So, final few things I want to mention today, and I've mentioned it a few times, is you should be using secure systems. Now, we know most of these cyber breaches are done through phishing, and they are done through email, usually by spoofing emails, and it's very easy to do that to non-secure email services. Shouldn't be using non-secure emails if you are handling sensitive or personal data. It's an absolute breach there, so you need secure mail. Um, there is a way of checking that. There is a list that you can go through to check if your email service is secure. But one thing I will highlight, if you have worked through the DSPT and you have completed those mandatory questions, you will be able to have NHS Mail. Now, NHS Mail is a secure email system. Again, it's free. I always mention this, I always highlight this, but it implements various steps on here. So, for instance, they apply end-to-end encryption. They also have a team that deal with cyber attacks and spoofing. So they are patching holes constantly. You can report phishing emails to them or suspicious emails, and they look into it and apply extra layers of protection. So in real time, that's always being done. They comply with GDPR, and they also give you secure options like multi-factor authentication. And they also integrate with other NHS and social care networks. They also reduce the risk of human error in email communication, and they do also provide business continuity and disaster recovery should you fall victim to one of these scenarios that we mentioned today. So, coming to a close, we've gone through very many different steps today, from backing up to what you do in the case of an incident, to various incidents that could occur, to steps you can have in place to protect yourself should those steps happen, and mitigate the risk going forward, and obviously the ICO reporting. But one of the most important things is, yes, we might have that document in place just waiting for this to happen, but we need to make sure that we are testing it and auditing it. And we do that by developing a testing schedule, by simulating different scenarios, and by documenting our test results. We can do spot checks, auditing. It's up to you how you're doing that, but it's something that you need to put in place. You need to review and update your recovery plans as well. So we know things are constantly changing, and obviously you need to be implementing those in place. So the final takeaways today is, as I said right at the beginning, business continuity plan is not just a one and done project. It is a living, breathing document. That's how you should treat it. You should be constantly refining it, and implementing it and enforcing it and ensuring that it works, because it will give you the maximum security, compliance, and protection. Cyber threats are real, but they're definitely manageable. Obviously, there's other threats out there outside of cyber threats that we've gone through. So those other situations that can happen, broken devices, but again, they are manageable provided we have a plan in place. So start off small, that's where I say test it and then constantly improve that process. Now, as I say, the support is there. I can offer you that full support. Obviously, go to the Digital Care Hub website. We have full guidance in there. We've been putting links in the chat throughout. This meeting is recorded, so you can review this back. I work closely with a team called the Sussex Digital Team. So again, we provide support there. And I've put my email on here, which is sam@sussexdigitalteam.co.uk. Do reach out to me if you need that extra support, and I will get a one-to-one in my diary with you. We can go through with that. But that is everything from myself. You should have a poll pop up shortly. But yeah, that's everything from me. So we'll open up for any questions, if anyone has any. And if you can complete that poll, that'll be absolutely fantastic. Really helps us out just so we get some real time feedback there. So you should literally see it just pop up on your screen. And if you start just quickly filling that out, that'll be great. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming along, everybody. Appreciate your time. And as I say, if you do need that extra support with DSPT or putting any of these in place, just reach out to me and I'll be able to support you with that.
Great. I think we're done with the poll. No one has any more questions.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much.